Hi, it is time to chat YA. I have recently finished 3 young adult books. Here they are. And in this video, I want to talk through all 3 of them. That was a tongue twister, it took me like 5 times to say. And chat about my thoughts, feelings, and reading experience. I really love young adult books. I'm passionate about, you know, talking about the ones that I really love. I used to work for a young adult publisher, and even in my job now, I still deal with lots and lots of young adult books. So, and though it is important to read backlist books, I also like to try and stay updated with what new ones are out and read some of those. So I've got a combo of different things in this video. And I'm gonna start with this one, I think. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is published by Walker Books, and I was kindly sent a proof copy which I read, loved, and then passed on to someone else, and this is the finished copy. This has been a huge success. It's been a really big success in the US. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list. It's got a quote from John Green on the cover. You know, it's doing pretty well for itself. Now, this is also an own voices story, which, in case you haven't heard of this yet, for me this has been sort of a concept that I've heard so many people talk about, especially in recent years. And although it absolutely makes sense, I wish I would have been more aware of it earlier. But basically, if you don't know what it means, I think the right way to describe it is that it's basically the experience of the main character comes from the personal experience of the author. So the fact that this is about a black girl in the US living in a poor neighborhood, describing her life and the people that live around her, and a lot of the main character's experiences are written from the experience of the author herself. And it doesn't mean that it's like an autobiographical book, because obviously there are a huge amount of differences, but I guess it kind of means that someone is writing from within the community that they're describing. I would say this book is very much sort of core young adult, you know, when you like try and describe young adult and I'm like, yes, this falls firmly within that. A lot of young adult books obviously tackle important issues, and The Hate You Give is one of them. As you might have seen, by the way, it says thug on the spine. But this book does tackle an issue that I haven't really read anything about before, especially in young adult. It's inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and it all starts when the main character Star is in the car with one of her childhood friends that she's sort of gotten out of touch with. They get pulled over by the police, and her friend gets shot by a police officer. And then in everything that follows, she has to figure out for herself where she fits in the community, if she wants to speak out, and in what way she can. And because she also goes to a quite rich white school in a different neighborhood, she has a lot of struggles there as well about, you know, how to fit in and how to portray herself. And what I think this book does really well, it sort of shows the two sides of it. On one side there is this like terrible event that's happened and all the big political movements that go around that, and then the other side there's also the day-to-day of just being in this school and not feeling like you fit in entirely, and trying to decide which part of yourself you should show or which part of yourself you should hide in order to blend in. It deals with like activism and how your friends respond to it. For example, she reblogs something on Tumblr about the Black Lives Matter movement, and then one of her best friends in school unfollows her, and her classmates also have this rally for the boy that was killed, but it turns out that they're mostly doing it to get out of class. So I feel like by having sort of both of these sides, the book paints like quite a full picture and gives you lots to think about. Another one of my favorite things that this book made me think about was the fact that Star's dad used to be more sort of on the criminal path, and now he has a shop and he like loves his neighborhood, although so many people look down upon this neighborhood, and he doesn't want to move out of it even though they can now afford to move somewhere else. And his discussion about, once you have enough money to move out, should you move away or should you try and help evolve the neighborhood and help people out? Can you still be meaningful to this neighborhood when you move away, or do you have to be there to help? And then also her uncle is a police officer, so I think it also really shows her struggle with the distrust of the police, but then also knowing a police officer personally and knowing that he is, you know, someone who's a police officer who's in her family, who she loves dearly, and who is basically like her second father. One of the things that this does really well too, and I think a lot of this comes from this being an own voices book, is that it really shows you the beautiful things in the neighborhood and sort of the funny characters that are there and the people that look after everyone. Dialogue wise, I thought it was really like snappy and witty, and there are lots of sort of light moments and really funny things to balance out the quite heavy subject matter as well. So even though it is a book that will really make you think. It's also just a really enjoyable book to read, and I would highly recommend this to everyone. Probably gonna be quite a long video, but we're gonna move to the second book, and it is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. First of all, this cover is absolutely gorgeous, and there's also a video online where you can see how this was made like in real life. This is not a digital image. Someone like put in all those nails and then put all the wire in between it. So cool. This is one that I almost read in one go. I read it initially for work because it's a Penguin book. And I also got to film some videos with Nicola Yoon recently, and I got to meet her, which was lovely. This book is set across one day in New York. The main characters are Natasha and Daniel. Natasha is Jamaican American and Daniel is Korean American, and Natasha's family is about to be deported. It is the day before they're about to be deported because her dad was arrested for drunk driving, and then they were discovered to be illegal immigrants, and she is basically on this last day in New York trying to figure out if there's anything she can do. And then she bumps into Daniel, whose older brother's just been kicked out of med school, I want to say it is, and so now suddenly all of the responsibility in the family is on him. They bump into each other. Daniel sees her and is like, this girl, I need to know this girl. And they spend the day together in New York, and they do this sort of questionnaire, which I don't know if you've heard before. That is the thing that if you do this questionnaire, if you ask each other these questions, this is how you can fall in love with a stranger. This book is such a like sweet and bright romance, but it also kind of deals with being like a second-generation immigrant and immigration in general and families and acceptance. While this is a little bit more sort of romancy than I usually prefer reading, because as you guys might know, I usually read like apocalyptic and dystopian and really like sad books pretty much. A bit of romance is nice from time to time, and I think my favorite thing about this book is that it had lots of little chapters in between where you suddenly jump to the point of view of a different character that they just interacted with, or you get a little bit of very specific history about the thing that they were talking about, which really like breaks it up and adds lots of little interesting bits. I also really like the ending. I was trying to see like where it was going to go, and I wasn't sure what Nicola would do for the end, but I liked the way she ended it. But I can't tell you anything about that, so if you've read it, just know that I really like the ending. If you're looking for a book to read in the sun this summer, then definitely do this one, and not just because it's in the title. And then we move on to book number 3, that is The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig. This is a book that I got when I was at Hotkey Books, and I realized, I was reading this on my phone by the way, and I realized by the end of it, I was like, oh right, I was reading the original manuscript. So some bits and bobs will probably have changed in the final version. And I also sort of started this book quite a while ago, read I think a third, and then recently finished the last 2/3. So I probably did myself a slight disservice in like the way that I read it, but I still really, really loved it and really wanted to talk about it. I love to pitch this as a time travel pirate story set in Hawaii, which for me was like an instant sell. Oh my gosh, I'm just going through the book now and I realized there's maps in here. Okay, my version obviously didn't have maps, so this is very cool. Yay! This is the story of Nix and her father, and they navigate through time and space, mostly just time, with their crew on their ship. The way that it works is that if they have a map, doesn't matter if it's a fictional map or a real map, they can navigate to the year that that map was created. You can only use the map once, and her dad, Slate, is basically on this mission to go back to the year where Nix's mother was still alive, because she died either while she was giving birth or soon after. And in that sort of mission, it seems like he is almost forgetting that by doing that he could possibly erase Nix's existence. So she's on this boat with him and she is along for the ride, but that there's this sort of realization that her dad is just sort of stuck with this idea. This is his main mission and he doesn't seem to notice anything else. In the story they arrive in Hawaii, and this is where this plot to get the specific map that will take them to Hawaii in the right year all starts off, and that is what most of the book is set around. So since Nix's mother is Hawaiian, the main character is half Hawaiian. This book has an amazing secondary cast of like diverse characters. My favorite character, and I think a lot of people's favorite character, is Kashmir, who is this thief that they picked up on their journey, and he's basically, you know, the ship's heartthrob. He's very like witty, he's very flirty, he always seems to have a solution to something, and he's just so charismatic and by far my favorite character. But one of my other favorite bits is the fact that they obviously are going throughout all of history, but They also go to modern day New York, and I think that was probably one of my favorite bits of the book, because if you can go between times and between mythical places, you can obviously find a way to make a lot of money by like bringing old artifacts over and then going to modern day and getting money for that. And I wish there had been more modern day settings in this book as well. Now there is the second book, which is The Ship Beyond Time, which I haven't read yet. So who knows where this is set? I do not know yet. And I think the one thing that I struggled with a bit in this book is that I didn't quite know where the story was gonna go, so I was thinking they were gonna jump to more different places. They do visit different like places and times in it, but for some reason I thought there was gonna be a lot more of that. And I think also at some bits I had a harder time sort of trying to keep track of the plot because it meanders a little bit, so like trying to figure out, okay, what are they doing now? What's the plan now? The overall story is very clear and very easy to get, but I think sometimes everyone's different plots and then like people betraying each other was a little bit trickier. The world building in this book is so rich. They talk a lot about colonization, but they also talk a lot about sort of the myths and legends surrounding these places. And I would highly recommend reading this. You know when certain books are written and you're just like, yes, I feel like this was written for me. And I'm happy I finally finished it. I should have just finished it in one go. I feel like I might reread it before I read the second one, but you'll hear more about that later. Alright, so that was it for me. Those were 3 YA books I read recently. If you've read any of these, do let me know what you think, and I hope that it will give you some inspiration if you're looking for some new young adult reads. Don't forget you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and GoodReads, all at Booksandquills, and I'll talk to you later. Doei!